Yo, it's your boy Ryan, Northwest Sports Fanatics. Back at you with a new video. Today is Friday, March 21st, 2025, with your boy Ryan and the Northwest Sports Fanatics. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. Smash that like button either now or on your way out. Donate to your boy if you can. Cash App $ ORIONNWSF or the YouTube Super Chat right here. NASCAR Craftsman's Truck Series, the Baptist Health 200 live from Homestead, Miami Speedway. We're going to get going here in just one moment. So let's cue up the music, take a look at the thumb, and let's get settled in for some Friday night racing. Let's get it. And on the thumb, I had to hit you with Kyle Larson. Now, this is a only drivers broadcast, which is a big reason why that we're going to be doing this particular race today. You're going to have Joey Logano and a few others that are going to be on the mic and a few others in the pits. And you actually have a few regular NASCAR Cup drivers that are going to be participating in this NASCAR Craftsman's Truck Series race. One, Kyle Larson, and Ross Chastain, as well as one of the bigger names. So definitely excited to see how this is going to go down here at Homestead. And more than likely, we'll end up doing the Xfinity race tomorrow, as well as the NASCAR Cup Series on Sunday. So we tried doing the trifecta last week. It was a success, so I figured we'd go that route. Oregon does play Liberty at 7 p.m. in the March Madness tournament, and I could have went that route, but I figured I would do the truck race since it is going to be all drivers, doing commentary. And once this race is almost over, then that Ducks game will start. Obviously, the Ducks are ranked 5th, and Liberty is 12th. And every single year in March Madness, you always get 1 or 2 12 seeds, beating a 5 seed. So that doesn't really hold well too much for Oregon, on a positive side. But again, we did have 2 12 seeds already win. So maybe that's already, what's going to happen. But, hopefully Oregon can find a way at the last game tonight in the tourney. But obviously here at Homestead, I am ready. Let's go, baby. Let me get settled in with all my screens here. I got to get it all situated with all the volume and all the screens. Hope everyone is having a fantastic day. Kevin Harvick, Big Bad Brad Keselowski, Joey Logano, all in the booth. 2014 Cup champion Kevin Harvick, 2020 12 champion Big Bad Brad, and 3-time NASCAR Series Cup champion Joey Logano. And they're going to have a few others that are going to be in the pits as well. Megan in the building, Cole in the building, Natman in the building. What's good? And again, Oregon will be on here in a couple hours. But I was a little bit more excited, believe it or not, for this particular race. I'll watch Oregon football, but I'm not going to sit there and watch every single, Oregon Duck basketball game. Maybe 25 years ago, when Luke Ridnour, was balling for them back in the day, and Luke Jackson. But again, having all drivers in the booth and actually having some of the regulars in the Cup Series going to be participating today, like Kyle Larson. He's going for the trifecta. Kyle Busch is one of the only drivers that has been able to sweep on a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It's pretty rare. You don't typically see guys attempt it, and many guys can't complete it, and let alone being able to come up first in the winner's circle on each one. Kyle Busch is one of the only ones that's ever done it, and Kyle Larson is going to try his best to try to win today. Starts off 3rd, and obviously tomorrow in Xfinity, and then obviously the Cup Series on Sunday. Let's go. Let me get situated here. We're good here. You can run high, you can run low there at Homestead Miami Speedway. And, this is going to be very competitive, with the trucks. And let me see here. I think I got everything situated. A nice job by Corey last week to get the dub. And let's go here. Okay. And we're about to get situated in just 1 second. Let's just do a quick review. All right, so March Madness so far, we got number 1 Florida up 55-34 on number 16, Norfolk State. No surprise there. Kentucky up big on Troy, 33-24. New Mexico up on Marquette, 26-21. Arizona and Akron just started off 11-8. And then we have some finals from earlier today. Number 1, Duke beating Mount. Let's see, what's here? What is it? Mount St. Mary's, 93-49. No surprise there. We have Alabama beating Robert Morris, 90-81. That was a little bit closer than it should have been. Iowa State beating Lipscomb, 82-55. Maryland winning 81-49. Let's see, Colorado State winning 78-70 over Memphis, and that's one of that 12 seeds in Colorado State that beat a 5 seed, and it typically happens in the tourney every single year, once or twice, always. And again, that's what makes me a little nervous for Oregon being a 5 seed going against Liberty as a 12. You know, Oregon could lose, but I'm hoping they win at least a couple games before they get knocked in the tourney. Ole Miss, you know, ended up beating North Carolina 71-64. St. Mary's beat Vandy 59-56. Baylor beat Mississippi 75-72. And what do we have left? We got Oklahoma and UConn, Xavier and Illinois, Bryant and Michigan State. And then the last game of the night, starting in about 2 hours, will be number 12 Liberty against number 5 Oregon for my Oregon Ducks. Let's go. We'll be shooting for 20 likes, obviously, within the first hour, 30 to 50 overall if we hit the algorithm, or possibly higher, and obviously 100 in the donos on every single stream. Let's go. We've got a severe downpour here in the Pacific Northwest. So me and Paisley got dumped on, but got my last walk in just recently, and got a chance to be able to get, you know, kind of dried off and changed. And yeah, I'm definitely ready for this Truck Series race. Homestead is going to be fire. This is going to be a fun weekend. And anytime you get regular drivers participating, I get it, you know, for some of the regulars in the trucks, you know, they might feel like, damn, you know, this is going to even be harder now, you know, to be able to be victorious. But you got to earn it. And I know Ross Chastain and Kyle Larson are going to be, you know, going for, you know, victory lane in the victor's circle. But that doesn't mean that someone like Corey Heim, you know, can't do it what he did last week, and some of these others as well. Definitely interested to see how it all plays out. Let me get another screen set up here. One sec. Corey Heim on the pole, Tanner Gray in the second position, Kyle Larson, Lane Griggs, Giovanni Ruggiero, Tyler Ankrum, Ross Chastain in the 7-hole, Grant Enfinga in the 8-hole, Stuart Friesen in the 9, and Ty Majeski in the 10. Let's go. And some notable individuals: Raja Karuth there in the Chevy 71 in the 12, Daniel Hemrick, Napa Know-How in the 19 in the 14th position, Chandler Smith obviously there in the 38 Ford in 15th. And let's see if there's anyone else that's kind of notable. And obviously Frankie Muniz, you know, obviously we know him being child actor on Malcolm in the Middle. And he's been starting kind of in the back, so it's hard for him to be able to get kind of towards the front. He's not dead last, but he's starting in 29th, and I'll definitely be rooting for Frankie, hopefully to get himself into a top 15 finish. If he can get into the top 10, great. But again, you know, starting so far back, we'll see if he can move his way to the front, but I'll always be keeping an eye on my boy Frankie as well. Let's go. And then Tony Brenninger is starting in 27th position. You don't get too many females there in the Truck Series, but I'll definitely be keeping an eye on Tony as well. Let's roll the screen down a little bit. And I was hoping that the first couple days of March Madness were going to be a little bit better competition wise. A lot of blowouts, a lot of games almost not really watchable if we're really being honest. But as we get into the next round, matchups will be much, much better. You'll have a lot more closer, games and less games that are going to be 20, 30, 40-point blowouts and whatnot. So. Eighth generation watermelon farmers. I did not know that. Okay, Ross. The melon man. Ross Chastain. Okay, I see you. All right, we are at 8. 2 more likes to be able to get to 10. 12 more to get to 20 to hit the algorithm, baby. Let's go. And they're getting everyone situated in the trucks. And I love races under the lights. There's just something about night racing under the lights. It has a little bit different type of mystique, to it. Not saying that, day racing is bad or not enjoyable, but, it's like Daytona at night or Daytona in the evening. Give me Daytona in the evening. It's just, you're going to get the chaos, regardless if it's, during the day or under the lights. But again, there's just something about the aura and the vibe and the mystique of racing under the lights at night and not having the weather be a factor. I'm really excited for, obviously Homestead and here at Miami Speedway, and we'll see what happens here tonight in the trucks, tomorrow in the Xfinity Series, which I believe will be around 1 p.m. Pacific, and we'll do that race as well. And we'll do the Cup Series on Sunday, which will be around noon, 12:30, around that time. So we'll be grinding it out. And then obviously next week, we got the MLB obviously opening day, even though it was already opening day there in Tokyo for the Cubs and the Dodgers. But for everyone else, they'll be getting settled in next week, and we'll be doing around this time next week the A's and the Mariners to start off the 2025 season. So, we'll try to sprinkle in as many trucks, Xfinity, and Cup races as possible, but with the Mariners coming, obviously we'll have to pick and choose and see what time, each event is, and do our best to, try to be able to get as many events under my belt here on the NWSF. Okay, baby. Drivers, start your engines. Love the aerodynamics of these trucks. And again, this one's cool. It's a little bit different than a lot of the other truck races. It's going to be commentated by all drivers. You got Carson Hocevar that'll be, in the pits, and he's kind of a young gun, 22 years old, up and coming. Since we saw Josh Berry win his first race in his career, being in his mid-30s, I wouldn't be surprised if Hocevar wins a race this year or gets pretty damn close. We thought maybe Ty Gibbs was the guy that was, the next guy that could be maybe a thing. But even Carson Hocevar early in these few, races that we've seen, I think he's got a little bit higher of an upside than Ty Gibbs. And you also get Kyle Larson and Ross Chastain, who are regulars in the Cup that are participating today. So it's pretty cool. You got Harvick in the booth, Big Bad Brad Keselowski in the booth, Joey Logano in the booth, and then you'll have a couple guys there in the pits like Hocevar and another individual down there as well. So definitely excited to see how this one plays out. It's not going to be too long. Obviously, if you look at where we're looking at lap-wise, we're only doing 134 laps, so only be a couple hours, 2 hours and 30 minutes, something like that. And then obviously once we get a little bit closer to the end of this race, that's when the Oregon Ducks will play Liberty in March Madness for the last tourney game. And I'll definitely be giving some commentary on that once we get to the end of this race and then the beginning of the Duck March Madness matchup against Liberty. Yeah, and like I said, Saturday and Sunday, the matchups some of them are still going to be kind of lopsided. You should have less blowouts, but there definitely will be some. You got McNeese and Purdue tomorrow, Arkansas and St. John's, Michigan and A&M, Drake and Texas Tech, Creighton and Auburn, which you should be able to manhandle them, but they will probably give you a little bit of a fight in the first half. BYU and Wisconsin, Gonzaga and Houston, and UCLA and Tennessee. The Houston-Gonzaga one, to me, is the most intriguing matchup out of them all on Saturday. And then on Sunday, you got Baylor and Duke, St. Mary's and Bama, Ole Miss and Iowa State, Colorado State and Maryland, and then the rest of the 4 games are going to be determined based on what happens tonight, who wins and who loses. So. And the further along that we get in the tourney, the games are going to be, much more competitive. But I would say that as far as, the competition level, it's been a little bit of a disappointment in March Madness, in my opinion, just in those first couple days. I get it, you're going to have 1 through 16, 2 and 15. So you expect, a 1 seed to blow out a 16 seed. But even some of the ones that were closer to each other, like 8 versus 9, you kind of expected a little bit more, at least I did. But again, you're always going to get a few upsets. And the one that you always want to mark your calendar for in March Madness is 12 seeds beating 5 seeds. You always get 1 or 2. I'm not sure if we're going to get 3 12 seeds. That would mean Oregon would lose here later tonight, and I don't think we will, but it is possible, and we'll see what Liberty can bring. We got Big Bad Brad and Joey Logano here on the mic, and I can't wait to be able to see what we got going on here today. Sarah in the building, what's good? Yeah, and obviously in that first game, you guys took care of business, didn't have any issues. And, being a 1 seed, you shouldn't lose to a 16 seed. So we'll see how it goes as the competition gets a little bit tougher. And hopefully you guys can make your way to the Final Four, or the championship game. Pole sitter Corey Heim, very dominant last week. And we'll see what he can do here today. His best Miami truck finish is 3rd last season. And Corey will definitely, be up there towards the front for a majority of this race, you would think. And definitely excited to see where Kyle Larson fits in to the mix, starting 3rd, and Ross Chastain, a regular Cup driver as well, starting in the 7th position. And Larson's going to try to go for the trifecta. And again, not many guys can win, let alone participate and finish, each race for the trucks, the Xfinity, and the Cup. But, Kyle Busch is one of those individuals that has been able to do it and win, at a particular track, not only for trucks, but for Xfinity and Cup. And if you also notice, Larson is a guy that will try to do as many races as he can during the week. Even with some of the other kind of lower tracks and lower level racing, you still see Larson getting involved in some of those. And most of the time when he participates in those, he wins. And we'll see if he can keep that hot streak going. But very cool to be able to see Ross Chastain and Kyle Larson in a truck, which is something that you don't really see that often. A little bit here and a little bit there. Tanner Gray, Corey Heim in row 1. Lane Riggs and Kyle Larson in the 07. That's why I had to put Kyle there on the thumb. Row 3, Tyler Ankrum, Gio Ruggiero. Row 4, Ross Chastain and Grant Anfinga. Row 5, Stuart Friesen and Ty Majeski. Row 6, Brandon Jones and Rajah Caruth in the 71. Hendrick Motorsports, I'll keep my eye on you. And then as we get a little bit further in the back, hopefully we can get Frankie Muniz a little bit more relevant, like he had at his Daytona finish when he finished 10th. So, but starting in the back, it's going to be tough. He's not dead last, but he's in row 15 with Keith McGee. So we'll see what Frankie can do. And it's kind of cool seeing Frankie get these different sponsors. He's been sponsored by Ryder, the moving company, this week. And, before, it was by like a law firm group. So it's like you never really know what sponsor Frankie's going to get aligned with, but it's pretty cool to be able to see him doing his secondary dream after acting. And I'm really rooting for him to have a good showing here tonight. They did Morgan and Morgan, for those lawyers, Morgan and Muniz, and now he's getting sponsored by the Ryder Moving Company, and hopefully he can represent properly for Ryder. Carson Hocevar there, one of the young guns in the Cup Series. I know Kyle Busch does not like Carson Hocevar. And, I saw a couple interviews, based on their interactions and whatnot. Sounds like Hocevar is one of those guys that's kind of up and coming, but he doesn't really apologize or kind of meet up, with the drivers that he ended up wrecking or ended up doing something questionable. So we'll see if that ends up changing at some point or another. I assume that, I'm not going to say for sure that he's going to end up getting in a fight or someone's going to approach him. But, if he races like he has so far, in this, early part of the season, it wouldn't shock me. But I think Hocevar is a young gun, though, but again, some guys, they lack a little bit of maturity, being that young, but he definitely has the talent. And we'll see what he has to report on in the pits here tonight. All right, baby. 134 laps, 201 miles. Stage 1 will be 30 laps. Stage 2 will be 30 laps. Final stage, 74 laps. Pit road, 45 miles an hour. Don't get caught speeding, y'all. And then fuel window, 50 to 55 laps. And we'll see where things kind of play out if we end up getting a lot of 3 wide and 4 wide in the early stage. Tires are going to be huge in this particular race. 1.5 mile track, banking points, 18 to 20 degrees on the turns on the front and the back, 4. And then the length, 1,760 feet from the front and the back. Lots of progressive banking, baby. And I ended up watching SmackDown with Odin. Obviously, we ended up getting the European time, so we watched that from noon till 3. And it was exciting. They were in Italy and they're on their European tour. If you didn't get a chance to obviously watch it then, I imagine the replays are going to be coming on around this time, and have a DVR, make sure you have that recorded. But again, the crowd wasn't probably necessarily as good as some of the other European cities. They did Brussels and they did Barcelona and then they did Bologna, Italy. But again, you get to see a little bit of Roman Reigns, right? The OTC, a little Seth Rollins, and a little CM Punk at the end. Definitely worth watching if you are a wrestling fan, for sure. Yeah, I got you. Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't see anything come up, and then we ended up ending the stream, so I can definitely do that for you. Fernando Alonso. Got you. And here we go. Homestead, Miami, baby. Let's go. All drivers broadcast. Big Bad Brad, Joey Logano, and many, many others, including Kevin Harvick, Carson Hocevar. Oh, we got a wreck already. Oh, wow. Oh, my God. The 17. Whoa. Just right in that was crazy. That was almost like Ross Chastain wrecking Chase, a few weeks back on lap number 1. I mean, we literally took in one turn and then we had a big wreck right out of the gates. And again, some truck races, you don't really get a lot of wrecks, as well as Xfinity like last week. And then we got a little bit more in the Cup. But Gio, that's tough. And I mean, this guy's a young gun too, only 18 years old, and that inexperience, tough. Ben Rhodes got caught up in the mix as well, 2-time Truck Series champion. Let's see this turn 1 action here. If someone breaks, and then it ends up kind of starting a domino effect, but they go into turn 1. Does somebody get loose here? What happens? And it's definitely harder to drive these trucks than some of the Xfinity and Cup cars. I mean, they're all going to be, on a different type of skill set to drive, but a little bit of contact and he got loose. And again, anytime you end up trying to squeeze in when it's 3 wide or 4 wide and you get caught in the middle between Ross Chastain and Enfinger, and looks like he just got a little bit of a tap, got loose, couldn't recorrect the driving there. And, once you get loose like that and you go sideways, you already know, not necessarily your night is over, but you know that you're probably going to hit the wall and cause some damage, and you're probably going to get T-boned by somebody, getting caught up in the mix, especially on, the first turn on lap 1. Wow. Early caution. See if we can squeeze in a couple photos here for Cole. Yeah, did not expect a wreck in the first turn, but hey, that's racing for you. We can go some of the old stuff and some of the new stuff. See, I'll get you one more. Jameis to the Giants. And you already know Aaron Rodgers is going to be going to the Steelers, but I wouldn't be expecting anything. If I was a Steeler fan, I would be super upset. But again, it's like you got a pretty good coach in Mike Tomlin, but again, as far as like skill position players, you usually have, some athletes that can play some of those, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end positions, but offensive line isn't the greatest. Defense, yeah, you got TJ Watt, Minka Fitzpatrick, Hayward, you got a few guys, but they usually don't stay healthy the whole year. And then some of those other guys get exploited and get kind of picked on. So, Steelers, defense for the most part, if they can stay healthy with their superstars for a whole year, they can end up being, a top 10 defense if that happens. But if not, they'll scale back quite a bit. But, Aaron Rodgers ain't going to be able to take, the Steelers to an AFC championship game or anything like that. So, I mean, especially if you saw what they were working with Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson and, Devontae and all these other individuals that you had. So, again, that's just kind of one of those things, when you have these aging quarterbacks, everyone thinks you're going to end up signing Tom Brady, but guess what? There's only one Tom Brady. And again, most guys, when they get old, Father Time, is undefeated, and you start to realize that, these guys start to decline. unless you're Tom Brady, and he's one of the only guys that, in old age that kind of, stayed consistent, between the early age of Tom, with the Patriots, and then the second half and the back end of his career with the Bucks. Facts. We got Logano, Big Bad Brad, and Harvick there in the booth. I love it. Four laps in after that first turn, first lap wreck. And hopefully, I don't mind, having a few wrecks here and there. But that's one thing about racing, you never really know what to expect. You could end up going the whole race with no wrecks, and a few cautions, 3 or 4. You could end up having 3 or 4 big wrecks and having 9 or 10 cautions. So definitely excited to see how this kind of plays out and what Ross Chastain and Kyle Larson can bring. And very unfortunate there, for a few of those cars that got caught up to 17 and the 99, but for the trucks, excuse me, but we'll see where it goes moving forward. And hopefully we don't have another wreck on the restart. Yeah, I mean, WWE seats are going to be spending, regardless if it's going to, be a NXT, a Raw, a SmackDown, but especially a PLE. So, Heim, Larson, Tanner Gray, Lane Riggs, Ross Chastain in your top 5. Heim, Larson, Gray, Riggs, Chastain in your top 5. Ankrum, Caruth, Envinga, Majeski, and Jones in your top 10 with Stuart Friesen on the outside looking in. Night racing, the best racing. I appreciate that. Sarah starting us off with a 10er. Appreciate you. Let me know what you want to do photo-wise, and I got you. $10 holla. Stacks on stacks. Racks on racks. Little cactus jack. Bang, bang. $10. 90 to go to hit the goal. Let me know what you want to do. It doesn't have to be necessarily racing related, and I got you. Caitlin Clark, I got you. Yeah, let's get past turn 2 here today. All right, here we go. Let's try one more time, baby. Green flag racing, let's go. It'll be very interesting to see what line, each driver is going to go on the high side or if they're going to go inside. Kyle Larson trying to take the lead early on. Corey Heim and Larson going at it. And you got Larson on the high side. Let's go. Heim, Larson, Chastain, Riggs, Gray, Majeski, Ankrum, Caruth, Friesen, and Daniel Hemrick. Napa, no how. Nice battle here with Corey Heim, Kyle Larson, and Ross Chastain in 1, 2, and 3 position, right neck and neck with each other. We're 9 laps in of 30 here in stage 1 with a wreck on the first turn. That brought an early caution out with a couple trucks involved, but they got that cleaned up, and now we're green flag racing, baby. Let's go. Yeah, I mean, if you can make the playoffs rather than not make the playoffs, or just like in football in the wild card, you'll take that spot if you can get it, for sure. Corey Heim on that high side in that Toyota, giving the Chevys of Ross Chastain and Kyle Larson a little bit of work. And Heim was on the pole, so he'll have a very good shot at winning this race here today. "12 laps in. Larson in first, taking that position from Heim. Larson, Heim, Riggs, Chastain, Majeski in your top 5. Ankrum, Gray, Friesen, Daniel Hemrick, Napa, no how. And Rajah Caruth there in Hendrick Motorsports right next to him as well. And Brandon Jones on the outside looking in. Yeah, I appreciate that. Anything that we can get, to be able to help her out. And, like I said, we're going to be doing a lot of, exercising like we normally do, but I got to cut back on some of the food, that I'm giving her so that way I can get her to drop a few pounds. And if that means I have to get her a few more toys throughout the day to keep her busy, and it's going to be a little bit tough to start off because I know there's going to be times where she's going to, be hungry and whatnot, but I need to make sure that she's at a healthy weight, even though she is a very muscular 65, 70 pounds. Normally for her breed is like, 55 to 65 pounds and whatnot. But, I looked at photos of her when she was incredibly overweight and not getting enough exercise, when she was at her smallest, and then what she looks like now. And she's all muscle, but again, she still does need to, drop a little bit, because if you can keep her up in that healthy weight, it could end up adding on a couple years of extended life. So I want to definitely have her live the best life that she can, being healthy and happy. Larson won 2 of his last 4 truck races, and he's definitely going to be trying to go for the Triple Crown this weekend here at Homestead in Miami. Odin in the building. What's good? Did you get a chance to watch SmackDown? or did your internet or did your link? Because I think the link ended up being a little bit wonky, at times, with some refreshing that had to be done, and opening and reopening and clicking on different links. But it was still pretty cool to be able to watch, on the European time from noon till 3. Still a little weird that we have SmackDown that's 3 hours, but I enjoyed the show. 14 laps to go for stage 1. Larson up front. All right, let's got to get a couple photos in here as we have a split screen here, obviously, so let's get some photos up of the legend, the icon. Well, Caitlin Clark. But Paisley will definitely appreciate it. And, I'm going to definitely grind and anything that can be done by likes, subs, views, donos, it's so greatly appreciated. I'll try to squeeze in as many of these. Luckily, so far I'm 4 for 4 with the photos, and we'll see if we can get as many as we can until we go full screen back to the matchup. We're at 10:90 to go to hit the goal. Wow. First 5, all of them are converting. It might be a record. Sometimes I go through photos, I don't know, for like Cole, for F1, and sometimes I got to go through like 10 before I get one that will format. So this is kind of refreshing. Wow, 7 in a row. Might be a record here. Appreciate you, and anyone that obviously supports on the Dono train will end up getting photos of whatever their favorite thing is at the moment. See if I can squeeze in at least one more for you. Appreciate you. I mean, there's a good amount, of photos, but just, converting the photos, so I can actually put them here in this particular program. Some are easier to convert than others. Some just won't let you convert the photo. So Larson, Riggs, Heim, Majeski, and Ross Chastain in your top 5. Ankrum, Gray, Hemrick, Napa, no hell, Friesen, Jones, and Caden Honeycutt on the outside looking in. Love the way that these trucks look on the track. It just, I don't know. I almost feel like it's like, it's like you're watching kind of like a video game like Gran Turismo. It's just, they're just so unique, the way the aerodynamics are compared to the Xfinity and Cup cars. And I know Larson is motivated to win here today. And again, when he races, he usually wins, more times than not. I mean, the last, 4 times that he's raced in the truck, he's got 2 wins, so 2 out of 4. So that's a pretty good percentage for not doing it that often. But Larson is a true, driver. Like, the guy can drive anything, trucks, funny car, Xfinity, Cup Series, like literally anything. And, he definitely has that skill set to be able to get it done here today for sure, as he's leading this race and leading it pretty convincingly. Larson, Riggs, Heim, Majeski, and Chastain in your top 5. Six laps to go before stage 1 is up. And then once we get to around 7 o'clock, at that point, then I'll flip on the Oregon Ducks versus Liberty. And, it was either that or this race for the stream, but I figure that's a pretty late start for a game. So I want to be able to watch some of that with Paisley and, spend some time with her as well. So. Yeah. And it's kind of funny, too, when you get people that don't know the rules, of YouTube and whatnot. There's plenty of people that are going to end up calling races, calling baseball, basketball, football, hockey games. As long as you're not showing footage, of the actual broadcast, you're good to go. So, some people are smart, some are not. So. Larson, Heim, Riggs, Majeski, Chastain in your top 5. Ankrum, Henrik, Napa, know-how in 7th, baby. Let's go. Friesen, Gray, Honeycutt in 10th. Chandler Smith in 11th. Yeah, Riggs looks pretty fast there today. I mean, Larson, Heim ended up having the pole, so, he'll be in the mix at the end as long as he doesn't get caught up in a big wreck. Ross Chastain and Larson should be obviously in the mix. Larson, is going to try to win this race, and being up front already doesn't surprise me. But, if you're looking at the top 5, no really big surprises there. And if we can get Hemrick up there for me, if we can end up, getting a few of these others, Caruth, up from 16th into the top 10. And then if we can end up getting, it might be a little bit of a tough ask, but if we can get Frankie Muniz to go up from 27th, and if he can have like a top 15 finish, I don't know if he's going to be able to have a top 10, on this track. I highly doubt it, especially with guys like Larson and Chastain that are racing, which normally they wouldn't be. So, it probably will end up being kind of a tough day, for Frankie Muniz, but you never know. Some guys might get caught up in a wreck and he might end up having a top 10 or top 15 finish. But based on what I've seen up to this point, his truck is not fast enough, to get up there, at least in the, this early stage in stage 1. And it doesn't, obviously help when you, start in qualifying and you're in the back. If you're starting in the, bottom 6 positions, unless, it's just because of a penalty, and then you can work your way up if you're, have a really good truck and you got a really good experience on a particular track. But he's so raw and inexperienced, he's going to end up overachieving like he did at Daytona for 10th, but there's going to be a lot of 20th place and lower finishes for Frankie Muniz. But I will be rooting for him to, I don't know if he'll be able to win a race, but, as many top 10 finishes would be great for him and his team for future sponsorships of that truck. And Corey Heim taking stage 1 from Larson there at the very end. Wow. That should have been all Larson. And Heim just kind of came out of nowhere. But again, he did win the pole and didn't lead too much there and found a way there on that last lap on stage 1 to get the points. We're at 10, 90 to go. All right, let's do an update here in March Madness. We got number 1 Florida versus Norfolk State, 89-61. No surprise. Kentucky, a 3 seed, beating the shit out of Troy, 14 seed, 50-39. New Mexico and Marquette. 10-7 matchups are some of the best because they usually end up being very, very close. 43-40. New Mexico at the 10 seed is up. You got number 4 Arizona up by 10 on number 13 Akron at halftime, and then the rest of the matchups obviously are finals. Number 1 Duke winning 93-49 over Mount St. Alabama 90, Robert Morris 81. That one should have been a little bit more of a blowout by Alabama. You're a 2 seed. How are you letting Robert Morris you only won by 9 and they're a 15 seed? It sounds like Bama is going to get dumped sooner than later, and maybe in these next couple rounds, don't be shocked if they get eliminated. Iowa State 82, Lipscomb 55, Maryland 81, Grand Canyon 49. And then you have the 12 matchup, like I mentioned, obviously before the tourney started, you're always going to have 1 or 2, sometimes even 3 out of the 12 seeds win. Colorado State as a 12 seed won 78-70 over Memphis. And then you ended up getting that same type of case yesterday in the biggest upset of the evening. And obviously with that, there were some pretty good matchups yesterday, but a lot of them ended up being kind of hard to watch. But McNeese, 12 seed, beating number 5 Clemson 69-67. And I don't know what it is, about 12 and 5, but it just seems like those 5 seeds, I don't know if it's just like the psychology of it all and knowing that you're a 5 seed and knowing every year 5 seeds get knocked off. I know if I was an attorney, I wouldn't want to be a fucking 5 seed, especially playing at 12, but hopefully Oregon can find a way to win as a 5 tonight. We already got 2 12 seeds that won. Will there be 3? Probably not. It's not common. It's usually 1 or 2. But Oregon has a poor first half. They could end up losing, but I'm hoping they win tonight. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you get teams that get invited just based on who they are, their school, the history of Kansas. But like Sarah said, if you watched them this year, this is probably like the shittiest team that they've had in a while. And again, the last time that you ended up having a team, ranked that high that ended up losing in the first round, being preseason number 1, it was also Kansas. So sometimes there's this like overhype, just based on the school, not necessarily the players. And again, they got exposed this year like they did a few years back. And, a lot of times just because you're a preseason number 1 does not mean that's going to, relate and be relevant once the tourney starts. They were not very good. And let's be honest, they probably shouldn't even have been as high of a seed as they were. What were they, like 7? They shouldn't even have been a fucking 7. I don't know who came up with that fucking number. Carson Hocevar, 22, 6'4", 180. Slender man. Not JT in the building. What's good, brother? I think a lot of people did, Sarah. I think a lot of people picked Arkansas, But again, some people, either you watch or you don't. But 99% of people that fill out a bracket don't even watch. Let's be real. Let's be honest. It's a lot of guessing, and you can look at the records, but the records can be deceiving in college basketball and March Madness because you can see a team that's like 28-4 going against a team that's 20-10. But who did that team that's 28-4? Who did they beat? If they beat a bunch of bottom feeders, that doesn't mean that they're going to win in the tourney. So again, and how many people are going to go back and look to see who that team played throughout the regular season? Fucking nobody. Nobody does that. Very rarely, are you going to get someone looking at the full schedule and see like, okay, did they actually play anybody? Or are they kind of a fugazi, team that's fake that, they got into the tourney, but they're not going to do anything. It's a much different than like the, tournament that we have, for the college football playoff where, there's less games and you can kind of figure out a little bit easier who's good and who's not, who's a pretender and who's a contender. But for March Madness, it's, truly is madness. And, sometimes you look at the record and that doesn't necessarily mean, they're as good as what the record says. Facts. All right, Majeski, Larson, Riggs, Heim, everyone going into the pits here. We're in stage 2. 4 laps in out of 30, 34 out of the 134. Unwinding. What was for dinner tonight? Not JT. Any luck on selling any of your collectibles? Any interest there or anything? Oh, you did. Sold your first item. Congrats. You read my mind. I think we have good ESP. Great minds think alike. Congratulations, man. Yeah, St. John's is intriguing, but again, most people, it's just purely guessing, for the bracket. Did you end up changing, what you had set for just buy it now? And did you end up doing just like a starting bid with a reserve, or did you just keep everything, just buy it now? Old boy tried to pull a fast one on you and offered half. I mean, based off that mentality, should have listed it for higher if he was going to be such a low ball, but countered with 40, and that's what I would have done as well. So, Seth is going to be on there. I don't really watch the show anymore, if I'm being honest. It's pretty rare that and when I do watch, it's typically only during football season, and it's very briefly. I wish I could get into it, with Pat McAfee show and Good Morning Football, but again, with all of these other hosts that they bring in, and special hosts, especially when it's non-football season, it's kind of a cringe watch for me. It's not really worth my time. Like, I feel I can do more reading and film study on my own. And again, I don't think that necessarily the show is terrible. I don't think it is. It's one of the better ones that's out there. But again, it's just not for me anymore. When it's football season, maybe tune in a little bit here and there, but I don't know. Schrager is kind of, cringy. Like, obviously when you get Kyle doing angry runs, that part is awesome, but I think overall the vibe of the show has gone tremendously down, and with Pat, going and kind of selling out with ESPN and not being able to really, be the more original, type of show, now with sponsors involved, it definitely feels like he's kind of holding back a little bit, and whatnot, and I think that takes away a little bit from the show, but again, compared to a lot of the other shows, that are out there that they just do arguing and whatnot, like Get Up and all that, then yeah, those are 1,000 times better than those shows. But shows you how hard it is to be able to find quality sports as far as broadcasting nowadays, and the whole like arguing thing is dead. People think that like sports fans want to be able to watch people argue over dumb topics, but they don't. Maybe that might have been something that got ratings 10, 15, 20 years ago, but it's not that way anymore. Especially when you get people that don't know what they're talking about, people that don't watch the games, people that, are just trying to be entertainers instead of actually know sports, it's kind of sad. Or you have like ESPN pulling their narrative, everything is about LeBron or the Lakers or Luka. A little ridiculous. No, you're good, bro. It doesn't matter if it's not sports related or whatnot. We're just happy that you're hanging out. Corey back up front over Kyle Larson. It seems like it's going to be, Heim and Larson maybe all night long. Majeski, Friesen, Honeycutt there in your top 5. Napa, no. Hal, Daniel Hemrick in 6. Let's go. Chandler Smith, Ross Chastain in 8th. Tyler Ankrum in 9th. And Tanner Gray in 10th with Lane Riggs, who was in the top 5 earlier on the outside looking in at 11th. And then once they bring up the graphic, I'll see where Frankie Muniz is. I assume Frankie's somewhere between 24th and 28th. So when they flip the graphic, we'll see where he's at. And we got one female driver that should be somewhere between 20 and 30 as well. Tony Brittinger. So we'll see where she is at also. Where you got Tony's in 25th, the only female on the track. And Frankie Muniz is right next to her and 26th, believe it or not. No, you're good, not JT. Don't worry about it, my guy. I mean, on the last stream that we went over on Wednesday, we were going over the JFK files, that ended up getting released. And, every once in a while, we're going to end up going over things that aren't necessarily sport related or just things that are going on in our world and whatnot. So, I mean, all I am is always reading and watching film. So, besides spending time with Paisley and whatnot. So, Heim, Larson, Friesen, Honeycutt, and Majeski in your top 5. Smith, Hemrick, Ankrum, Chastain, and Gray in your top 10. 42 laps in out of 134, 12 in out of 30 here in stage 2. I love racing under the lights. Come on, Hemrick, get up there, baby. Napa, no how. Hemrick in Napa 19. Let's go. Oh, well, I mean, it just depends on how much you know about the whole JFK situation. Obviously, there's always been thoughts that there was a conspiracy, right? That it wasn't the individual that they blamed, as the shooter. And then eventually that individual ended up getting, clipped, obviously in jail and whatnot. And, lots of, I think the rabbit hole goes obviously a lot deeper than people think. The person that they said that didn't do it and was a patsy. There was more than one shooter, and there was a lot of people that were involved. And even the vice president at that time, Lyndon Johnson and whatnot. So it shows you sometimes when you end up being a good person, and you have values and morals, but people in your own camp don't agree with you because certain things that you say or do may not benefit them, based off money or, power or whatever it may be. And sometimes people that you think that are your friends are the ones that end up trying to kill you. And I feel that obviously that is very much the case in, that. And, you look at MLK and Martin Luther King and a lot of others, but there was like 40,000 docs, that were released. But again, they're not going to release everything. And, there's definitely going to be things that will never be released, so it's like you're going to be able to get more, pieces of the truth, but no one will ever know the full extent of the truth because they're not going to ever just give everything up and whatnot. It seems like a lot of times that, with crimes and mysteries, they kind of wait, the government and everyone else, they wait until like everyone is pretty much dead, or everyone is just so old that they can't really do anything. They're like 100 years or older, or everyone is already dead in that time. And then they start to release information for, it would be like, people's sons or people's daughters that were involved, they might be alive, but the original people that were involved, obviously, so much time has passed, that nothing really is going to be done, to punish certain individuals because even those individuals that were involved may not even be living at this time. So. And there's always going to be, different motives and whatnot. It's always going to be about money. It's always going to be about power, and I feel like it shows you, like, a lot of those people that got made fun of being like conspiracy theorists and, oh, you're just conspiracy theorists, you're crazy. Now you're starting to realize that a lot of that stuff and a lot of those people were right. That, they weren't crazy. They knew that this was a cover up and whatnot. And, just like they said that aliens and UFOs don't exist, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, and now they're admitting, yeah, they are real. They do exist. So it's just kind of a matter of time before you start to figure out that just because you read something or see something on the internet or on the news does not mean it's real. It's just what they want you to hear. And eventually the truth, or at least part of the truth, will come out, at a later date, but usually at that time, again, the people that were involved, they can't be punished because they're already dead. But there's, many countries involved, people that were in the own JFK camp that were involved. There's always going to be, a motive, and there's always going to be an angle, just like in anything. 10 laps to go here in stage 2, 50 laps in out of 134. Corey Heim, who had the pole, sitting up front, winning stage 1. He might win stage 2. Won last week. Ty Majeski, Kyle Larson in 3rd. Friesen is in 4th. Honeycutt in 5th. Ross Chastain in 6th. Daniel Hemrick, Napa, no hell, in 7th. My guy, Lane Riggs in 8th. Tyler Ankrum in 9th. And Chandler Smith in 10th. Grant Enfinga on the outside looking in. $8 to go here in stage 2. I think that's a good decision too, especially if tickets were going to be so much, Sarah, $200 is a lot of fucking money, And again, even if you're, have a full-time job or a part-time job, there things are, sometimes, just staying at home and, getting a pizza or whatever and hanging out with all the regulars and watching it. Obviously going to the event is cool, but then go to the event, you have a $200 ticket. Then you want to buy a t-shirt, that's $45. Then you want to get food, and then you're dropping another, $30, $40. And then by the time you go home with all the gas that you ended up spending, it probably will end up being, like a $300 to $500 event, when everything is all said and done, if you want to spend the money that you want to at an event like that. And not going crazy, but just doing the basic stuff. Little snack here, a little drink here, maybe a souvenir that I remember this event, and everything is so drastically overpriced that, it's like, it would be cool if you're rich, but, if you're not, sometimes you got to make that decision that, hey, watching it from your own couch or sitting area sometimes is the best seat. 6 to go. Oh, man, I love Jacob Fock, too. Super entertaining. You got to watch SmackDown. It was on earlier today. Yeah, you can always buy shirts online, but the thing is like when you buy a shirt or a souvenir at an event, it's kind of cool. But again, it depends on if they, it's like anyone can buy a shirt, discounted on WWE Shop or, on sale for $20, $25, $15 or whatever, if you can get it on sale. But, especially when you go to an event, you're going to be paying like $40 to $50 for a t-shirt, which is pretty ridiculous, but that's just kind of how it is. And that's how it's been for years. Even for, regular, Monday Night Raws and SmackDown, that was kind of the regular, if you wanted to go to their, little merchandise area. So Yeah. Plus, also with shirts, sometimes sizing is tough at the event. You know, they usually will have like small and medium and large, but that doesn't, fit everybody, right? Everyone is going to, have a different size. So again, if you want to get an extra large or a double X or a triple X, at a live event, they don't have too many of those. So yeah, I mean, sometimes it gets tough. Someone needs a double X or triple X and they got a medium of your favorite fucking shirt that you want to buy. Can't buy it. You got to figure out another alternative there. 2 to go. Yeah, just pure athleticism, and working on, doing that high risk maneuvers from the top rope, at an early age. And, it's cool to be able to see, individuals. It's not only going to be, skinny wrestlers that can, do the high risk, or like lucha libre type of wrestlers. Sometimes you'll end up getting, guys and girls that weigh a little bit more, that don't have the prototypical high flying, high risk body. And that's what makes it a little bit more unbelievable and special when you can see someone do things like that. Like the Eliminators from back in the day. Remember Perry Saturn and John Cronus? Cronus was huge, and he could do some crazy shit off the top rope. Like anytime you see anybody doing 450s or backflips or, anything like that, and, they look like maybe too, thick to do the move, like a Jacob Fatu, or too tall to do the move like Cronus, and then they do it, and you're like, whoa. And Corey Haim again winning stage 2. Wow. And again, Larson has been right there with them. And Corey Haim showing and flexing on him, winning stage 1 and stage 2. Haim, Larson, Majeski, Friesen, Honeycutt. It kind of feels like it's going to be between Haim and Larson for the win here today. Riggs, Chastain, Hemrick, Ankrum, Enfinga, and then Chandler Smith on the outside looking in. We're almost halfway through this race already. And then in about 45 minutes or so, I'll turn on the Ducks and Liberty. And hopefully Oregon can find a way. New Mexico and Marquette, that 10-7 matchup is always intriguing. 55-55 with 8 minutes to go, and it could go either way. But all the other matchups are pretty much blowouts. And then we'll figure out what happens with Oklahoma and UConn, Xavier, Illinois, Bryant, and Michigan State. And then the last game of the night at 7:10 on True TV, number 12, Liberty against number 5, Oregon Ducks. Oh yeah, I always liked the bigger wrestlers. I was always a big Vader guy, Bam Bam Bigelow guy. Like, again, everyone's going to have, certain, shapes and sizes of different types of wrestlers, but I mean, I've been watching since I was like 3-4 years old, watch a lot of different federations, WWF and ECW and then WCW. And then now you got, Impact and TNA and NJPW and ROH. But obviously AEW and WWE are king. But again, the talent is still there. But, some of those vintage wrestlers from back when I was a kid and, growing up in my teens, they'll never be replicated. The 80s and 90s era was by far the best. But I will say this, since Triple H has taken over, this is the most excitement globally that we've had for wrestling and a product of wrestling since, the best time of wrestling, the Attitude Era and the Nitro versus Monday Night Raw era and the Monday Night Wars. the peak of wrestling. You had some good shit in the 80s with the Hulkamaniacs and whatnot, Ultimate Warrior, Andre the Giant, Ric Flair, all that back in the day. But really, the peak of wrestling was from 95 to 99. That was when you ended up having the best WWF in the Attitude Era. You had, obviously, WCW, with the NWO, WWF with DX, and then ECW with RVD and Sabu and everyone, in their primes. And I feel like right now, you're starting to kind of feel like similar vibes than back then. And, and it took for Vince to get kicked out, for this to happen, but thank God for Triple H. It's Veda time. Yeah, me and Odin, we got similar favorites, from back in the day. All right, we're in stage 3 now. All right, we got Heim, Larson, Friesen, Majeski. Everyone's hitting the pits here. Yeah, always Macho Man. Contact there in the pits. Yeah, let's look here at pit road. Regs. Wow. That's crazy. I would have probably fainted. Love me some Macho Man. Heim, Larson, Friesen, Hemrick all the way up to 4th. Let's go. Napa, no how. I love it. Riggs in 5th, Honeycutt in 6th, Majeski in 7th. Ross Chastain hasn't been out of the top 10 all day, and I don't think he will be. Infinga in 9th, Brandon Jones in 10th, and Chandler Smith in 11th. Oh, yeah. I don't think there's anyone that isn't an Undertaker fan. Now, Undertaker was never like my number one. There was always going to be others that I liked more than him, back in that time period. But he definitely is one of the icons and the legends and whatnot. So, he was probably, not maybe in my top 5, but he was probably in my top 10, overall. But there was just other individuals that I liked a little bit more. I mean, I'm a hardcore, wrestling fan. So, I want to be able to see some innovative shit. So it's like, if I want hardcore wrestling, for like ECW, RVD, and Sabu. Those guys were incredible, and what they were doing in ECW, WCW, and WWF wrestlers only dreamed that they could be as athletic or as crazy as those two back in the day. And even though it was the lowest budget promotion, to me, at times, it was more exciting than, Nitro or Raw at times, just depending on, the matches and what was going on. I'm a big NWO guy, so obviously when you're NWO for life, brother. Ooh, yeah. Not that I didn't like DX with Shawn Michaels and Triple H and Chyna and the Road Dogg, Jesse James and Badass Billy Gunn, and we've seen X-Pac and Styx, obviously go in both of those and whatnot. So big Stone Cold and Rock guy, big Macho Man guy. So I feel like Undertaker was always one that I enjoyed, but definitely was not like in my top favorite. But definitely was one that I did enjoy, and that was good for WWF. And he was really the only big superstar that stayed loyal to Vince. I think Vince, we already know Vince is a terrible human being, but I think Vince actually, I feel like, he loves The Undertaker more than Shane. Like, I feel like, because he knew how big Undertaker was for the business, and he never left. He stayed loyal and whatnot. And, even when Vince was trying to be like normal instead of a creeper, like you never really saw Vince get too emotional and whatnot, like in a positive way. But one of the more emotional, real aspects of Vince McMahon, besides being a creeper, is obviously talking about how Undertaker stayed loyal and never left. When a lot of these other guys left to WCW or left to, another federation and whatnot. So I can definitely, respect Undertaker for, being loyal. But, of course, when you're the Undertaker, it didn't really make any sense to jump to WCW, especially when you're one of the more higher paid wrestlers and, you built your whole, thing there. And, the owner of the company at the time, Vince, loves you. Why would you leave? If he's going to cater to you and you may not have the belt all the time, but if you are feeling like, you have a good thing going, why leave? And that was a smart decision by Undertaker to stay. Blue World Order. The Blue Meanie. Big Stevie Cool. I just kind of feel bad for like wrestling fans that didn't, give ECW a chance, during the Monday Night Wars with Monday Night Raw and with WCW Nitro. Obviously, those were battling with The Rock and Stone Cold and Mankind and Undertaker and DX, going against NWO or NWO Wolfpack. But, if you go back and watch like RVD and Jerry Lynn, and obviously when RVD came to WWF, it was like a shell of himself. Like, he did some of the moves that he did in ECW, but they kind of scaled him back quite a bit for not being as hardcore, which made it not as enjoyable for me. It was cool to see him get some respect and love, but it wasn't the style of wrestling. It was like a tame version, a watered down version of what I am used to watching, and there's certain individuals like Jerry Lynn that maybe some people don't know who that is, but if you go back and watch like Living Dangerously and watch a few matches, like RVD put on amazing matches with big guys like Bam Bam Bigelow, falling through the ring and winning the belt and going against big guys, little guys. But I don't know if I've ever seen anyone more entertaining, in their prime than RVD. ECW RVD was on a whole nother level, and that's compared to Stone Cold, The Rock, and DX, NWO, or Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels. I mean, everyone has their moments, but I have never seen athleticism like RVD in his prime. Not RVD at WWF, but RVD only in ECW from like 95 to 99. It was insane. Same thing with Sabu. It definitely made hardcore wrestling go to a whole nother level. I mean, besides what you would see from like Mankind, getting thrown off the cage by the Undertaker. Heim, Chastain, Riggs, Larson, Friedson, Hemrick, Napa, no, Howe, Enfinga, Honeycutt, Jones, and Corey Day in 10th. This is the lowest that we've seen Larson drop down to 4th. I mean, Vince shaped the WWF in his own vision. He didn't give a shit about the fans or what they wanted or who was a crowd favorite and who wasn't, you know. And I imagine that, you know, even in certain cases, he probably didn't even want to put the belt on guys like Kofi Kingston or Daniel Bryan, because that wasn't really what he was about. He hated factions. He hated little guys and middle tier guys. You know, he only liked the big guys that looked roided out. You know, those were guys that he wanted to kind of push, you know, like the heavyweights, and that was it. But we're in a better spot now. But man, I don't know who my top 5 are. I mean, I have too many, you know, like just ones that I enjoyed, but obviously RVD and Sabu and ECW. I'm a big NWO guy, so I'm a big Scott Hall and Kevin Nash guy, and just NWO Wolfpack, NWO Black and White guy. If I had to choose between Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, it's Bret Hart. You know, I always kind of like, you know, and not everyone is a Bret Hart guy. It seems like you get more people that go the Shawn Michaels route, but I know Sarah and a few others are like myself that are more Bret Hart, you know, as far as, you know, a grappler, you know, the excellence of execution. You know, there wasn't too many guys that could actually grapple and do moves and make it entertaining, and that was Bret Hart and the Hart Foundation. That was fun. You know, Stone Cold and The Rock. I mean, who didn't like that feud? You know, and those guys were incredible and definitely held it down for the Attitude Era. We were incredibly blessed with those two. I haven't really been able to see too many wrestlers fill those guys' shoes, even to this day. Chastain in the front position there over Corey Heim. I see you, Ross. Chastain in first, Heim in second, Larson third, Riggs fourth, and Friesen in fifth. Undertaker, Bray Wyatt, The Great Muta, New Jack, Vader. That's a great list. Bret Hart, Macho Man, Sting, Stone Cold, and Taker. Which Sting is your favorite? You like Real American Sting when he was wearing the red, white, and blue and he had the blonde frosted tips like Zach Morris? Or do you like when he ended up being a little bit more dark, when he ended up being kind of like the Crow or in the NWO? Odin, you're more of a Bret guy than Sean? Yeah. I mean, Sting definitely had many, you know, different types of, outfits and character shifts. You know, not as many as like a guy like Chris Jericho, because by the time he's said and done, he'll probably have more character shifts than anybody and whatnot. A true icon, Chris Jericho. Yeah, I'm a big Eddie Guerrero guy too. Love me some Eddie. You know, but again, I there's too many for me to just be like 5. You know, it's like I almost have to have like a top 10. And even then, I probably would be missing out on a few guys. Adjust it there. There we go. $77 laps in. We're more than halfway through. 17 laps in out of 74 here in this last stage. Kurt Angle or Perk Angle? You know, it's crazy. After he left WWF, he actually had some of his more memorable matches. And it's kind of sad because I think a lot of people didn't even see him. You know, they only remember Kurt Angle and WWF, and that's it. And then once he left the company, I don't think a lot of people followed his career. Some people did, but not everyone. And I feel like if you missed some of the Perk Angle, matches, that's when he was kind of like an ECW wrestler where he was just fucking crazy. You know, just perked up and, you know, doing moves and doing things that he never would be able to do in WWF. Frank Lundy, Korean War veteran. Yeah. I mean, there's just too many. You know, you start going down to Samoa Joe, and then you go Kevin Owens, and then you go Sami Zayn. Like, you know, it just, you know, once you go to one name, it leads to another name, and then another name, and Chastain, Heim, Larson, Riggs, Hemrick. I like that. Chastain and Larson, full-time drivers there in the Cup. Heim, obviously very dominant, winning stage 1 and stage 2. And then we got my guy, Napa, no hell, Daniel Hemrick in 5th. I love that. Let's go. Where's Caruth at? Caruth is with Hendrick Motorsports. He's in 17th or 18th. Tony is in 27th. Where is Frankie Muniz? 26th. See, and again, with these trucks, once they're kind of in the back, you kind of stay in the back. Like, you know, you're not going to end up moving up that much. And that's kind of been where, you know, Frankie Muniz has been stuck back there. You know, he had the really good performance at Daytona, but that was based on maybe other wrecks happening and him being able to move up the field. But if you don't have any monster, like, you know, 5 to 10 trucks being eliminated for you to go from 25th to 15th, you know, and then maybe eventually getting up to the top 10, you're going to have a day where you're sitting from 20th to 30th. And that's where Frankie has been kind of stuck in the back. Yeah, I don't know, but if I had to try to do a top 5, gosh, that's tough. If I had to try, you know, obviously RVD and Sabu, you know, would have to be on there. Macho Man has to be on there. Scott Hall has to be on there. So RVD, Sabu, Macho Man, Scott Hall. And then if I had to choose one last guy, Stone Cold. Obviously, I love The Rock as well, but I think that's where I would go. You know, RVD, Sabu, Macho Man, Scott Hall, Stone Cold. You know, so that way I give you a little bit of ECW, I give you a little bit of WWF, and then I give you a little bit of WCW. You know, big Razor Ramon and big Scott Hall guys. So, but that's mine. All right, let's see if I can do them. Let's see here. All right, so I think that if I had to put them in order, this is my order, I think, right here. Scott Hall, Macho Man, RVD, Stone Cold, Sabu. But again, I spent a lot of time watching ECW, WCW, WWF, so, you know, but just for entertainment, you know, value, so. Yeah, and if we're talking like modern day, yeah, Seth is on my list in my top 5, for sure. 46 to go. Heim, Chastain, Riggs, Larson, Hemrick, Honeycutt, Friesen, Enfinga, Jones, Ankrum, and Chandler Smith in 11th. But I like what I'm seeing in the top 5. Heim, Chastain, Riggs, Larson, and Hemrick. Any one of those 5, depending if they can, not get caught up in any wrecks, which I don't know if we're going to have any. Here late, we might have one. But Heim winning stage 1 and stage 2. Seems like he's got the best truck here tonight besides Kyle Larson. But I love seeing Hemrick up there in the top 5. It's been a couple races since I've seen him up there rocking the Napa know-how. So a top 5 finish for Hemrick would be awesome. Oh, nice. Now, are they going to show like the movie and then oh, Larson. Oh no, he's smoking, he's sideways. Uh-oh. Larson out of control. Holy cow. Big 360 but avoided the wall. Whoa. Now, are they going to be showing like any of the movies and then they're going to be playing based on the movie, or is it just straight up like musical and they're not going to have like anything of the movie or related in the background? Man, that's crazy. Larson spinning that. Musical is based on the first movie. And then in the musical, are they recreating some of the songs that were done in the first movie, or is it more like original stuff? Riggs makes contact. Uh-oh. Ah, interesting. Larson got loose. And again, in the last 4 truck races that he's participated in, he's won 2 out of 4. And he was the strongest truck other than Corey Heim winning stage 1 and stage 2. And unfortunately, I don't know if this is necessarily going to eliminate his chances of getting back towards the front. I mean, he didn't really have any structural damage too much there. A little bit on that right side by the 07 on the door, but didn't slam into the wall, didn't really get T-boned, so he kind of got lucky there. He's really lucky he didn't get T-boned there. Awesome, cool. Have you got a chance to work on any of your Legos yet? Oh, Daniel Hemrick in 3rd. Napa know-how. Let's go. Uh-oh, got a lot of trucks hitting the pits here. Last pit stop, more than likely. Heim, Riggs, Hemrick, Honeycutt, Friesen, Jones, Bird, Ankrum, Day, and Garcia making an opportunity to get up into the top 10, and Mills on the outside looking in. I understand. 42 to go, baby. Let's go. Ross Chastain lost a position. Hemrick up a spot. Let's go. It's going to be very tough to be able to beat Corey Heim, but I mean, if Hemrick is in third, he'll have a shot if he can stay up there for the rest of the way. I'd love to be able to see a Napa win, whether it's Chase Elliott or Daniel Hemrick. Ooh, Carruth making a little bit of a jump up there. Up 8 spots. Okay, Raja finally getting an opportunity with his Hendrick Motorsports Chevy in the 8th position. Here we go. I mean, obviously in a perfect world for me, I would love to have Heim up there, Hemrick, and obviously Carruth both up there for Hendrick Motorsports and obviously for Napa. And I definitely would want to see Ross Chastain as well as Kyle Larson up there as well. It's kind of unfortunate that spin out happened for Larson, especially when he's had the best truck besides Heim all day. But on his end, he's got to be happy that at least it happened with like 40 some laps to go rather than like 15. Because if it's 15, you're not coming back. You're not catching up. But it's pretty tough with the trucks once you get kind of pushed into the back to move your way up to the front, unless you are a very good driver and you have a very good truck. So we'll see how far back Larson will be. Where is Larson at? Larson's in 25th, right next to Frankie Muniz in 26th, where he's been pretty much stuck there. I mean, even Tony Bredinger has been able to get past Frankie Muniz, but we'll see if Larson can get into the top 10 before the race is up, but it'll be tough. Yeah. You're going for the 9. He's in good position right now in 5th. I mean, if I could have one individual win, it's Hemrick. So I'm Napa all day, every day. Napa, no hell. Race is going fast, and that's why I decided, to do this, because, when I say I love something, I don't lie about it. I really do, enjoy this, and I feel like the more that drivers, teams, and it's more interesting, just like in anything that you end up supporting. But again, years ago, I may not have known as much, and so it didn't really interest me. But again, you have to pivot and things have to change, especially when you end up doing a channel as your full-time job. Sometimes you might be doing one thing and then you have to do a little bit less of another thing and make an opportunity for something else. And we never really did the trucks before or the Xfinity besides last week. We got good results, and again, they go by pretty fast. It's not like sitting in here for 3-4 hours. It's like I like to be able to hang out for 2 to 3 hours, and being able to spend time with y'all, see how you guys are doing. Good for the mental health, where we can vibe, and I just try to find something exciting for that particular day that we can do. And plus, there's not a lot of people that are going to be doing the trucks or the Xfinity or the NASCAR. So sometimes you got to, dip your pen with the ink, so to speak, into certain things and see if something new can end up being a regular thing for the channel. So since we pretty much do everything. I mean, one thing is for sure, basketball in general is by far the worst. So again, doing a little bit less basketball and doing more others, is kind of key. We're doing more WWE, we're doing more NASCAR, and obviously trying to do a little bit more NHL for the Kraken. I'll still do the Blazers here and there if there's a time for me to do it, since they're competitive, even though they're not a great team, but they might make the playoffs this year. They're only a few games back from play-in, and we'll see how that goes. But overall, basketball really isn't that great, but we'll still try to squeeze in a little bit here and there. And then we got MLB right around the corner. I mean, this time next week, we're doing the A's and the Mariners. And I can't wait, and we're going to be doing a lot of Mariners streams. So, there are going to be some truck races and Xfinity races that I'm going to have to skip, but there may be some that I'll do, depending on what time they're on. All right, we're green flag, baby. Let's go. And plus, this gives an opportunity for, newbies and OGs, to watch along, on, FS1 or a link, and, to kind of get more acclimated in, this particular sport. And I really feel that anyone that is a regular or a newbie, if you just pay attention on this channel, you can learn a hell of a lot more than on other channels, because we're doing more material here, than most, right? Basketball, baseball, football, hockey, NASCAR, wrestling, there isn't really anything that we don't do. So it may not be someone's favorite thing, but you can still educate yourself and get a little bit smarter based on, what's going on. And the more you know about something, the more interesting it becomes. Yeah, at SmackDown, Randy actually opened the show, and they were obviously singing the theme song, and KO came out and interrupted him before Randy could even speak a word. So, a little promo at the very beginning. Chastain, Heim, Ankrum, Riggs, Hemrick, Napano, Howe, Enfinger, Smith, Gray, Friesen, and Garcia in your top 10. Brandon Jones on the outside looking in. And plus, it's good for me because I love racing and never really could get into the trucks or the Xfinity as I do now. And it's nice to be able to see it on a weekly basis and to become more familiar with some of the lower to mid-tier drivers. And again, once you start, focusing on, the sport itself and doing more and more races, things become a lot more easier to follow. Come on, Larson. Larson's moving. Come on, Larson. Got 34 trucks out there. Well, 32 now. 2 of them are out. Larson in 15th. Let's go. Come on, Kyle. And he's got 35 laps to go. Can you imagine if they only had 10 or 15 and he spun out? He wouldn't be able to catch up. But based on his driving ability, I think that he will get into the top 10 here pretty quick. I don't know if he can get back into the top 5. I don't know if there'll be enough time for that, but I definitely think he can go from 15th to 10th, within the next 10 to 15 laps. In about 23 minutes. By the time this race is almost over, the Ducks will be on, and then I'll be able to take Paisley on a long walk, and I'll be able to hopefully watch the Ducks win against Liberty. And then if the Ducks win, we might end up doing Oregon, as one of the matchups in March Madness. I'm not going to do probably a bunch of March Madness games, but I'll do a couple. Oregon will obviously get priority for me, but then, depending on, who's playing who as we get further in the tourney, we'll definitely do at least a couple, even if we have to wait until the Final Four or the Elite Eight or the championship. So, come on, Hemrick. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. We need 9 more to get to 20. And if you haven't done it yet, do your boy a solid. Please do. Every like, every comment, every dono, everything counts. Heim and Chastain going at it. Heim takes over. Heim, Chastain, Riggs, Ankrum, and Hemrick. Come on, Daniel. Corey has been very dominant. He won stage 1. He won stage 2. And if he can get that clean air, he's going to have a very good chance to win this race. We're at 10, 90 to go. I'm going to check on Paisley here real quick and see how she's doing. Oh, Paisley's just snug like a little bug with a little blankie. Opening day, March 27th. Logan Gilbert and Severino. Can't wait. Cardinals have the Twins on the opening day. At least you're at home. You got Gray versus Lopez. Can't wait. Baseball right around the corner. Well, that sounds good. Oh, Martinsville next week, huh? Man, at this point, it's going to take a miracle for someone to be able to get past, Corey Heim, because it seems like Corey, every time he ends up getting past, he ends up taking the lead back within just a couple laps. His truck and his skill set, very good. I don't know what it is about his Toyota, but man, he is solid. Only Toyota there in the top 10 besides Friesen. They're in the 9th position and Jones in 11th. But it's all Chevys and Fords behind him. Oh, yeah. Munoz in 25th, Rajah Cruz in 22nd. $23 to go. I feel like with racing too, unless we have like a weather delay with rain, then it's like, oh God, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, and it's almost unbearable. But when you end up having just like the normal amount of cautions, like 4 through 9, and a couple wrecks here and there, like you can still get through a race pretty quickly. Like I feel like when you watch a race that goes, 2 hours to 3 hours, it doesn't feel like it. It feels like an hour and a half or like an hour. It goes by so fast. I feel like we just kind of started this thing already and we're already like 2 hours in. Uh-oh, Chastain sideways. And there goes Riggs past him. Uh-oh. The NASCAR Cup guys, they're falling back. Kyle Larson at 12th after a little spin out by Riggs. Got that little love tap. And nice to be able to see him making his way back into the top 10, but with only 22 to go, 21 to go, I don't think you're going to get a top 5 finish out of Larson unless there's a wreck involving some of the guys in front of him. Ooh, Riggs getting towards the front. Wow. First time Riggs has led the race. Wow. Riggs, Chastain, Heim, Hemrick, Ankrum, Smith, Garcia, Enfinga, Majeski, and Larson in 10th. Look at him. Man, Larson is so good. I mean, he is such a quality driver. It doesn't matter if it's, like a funny car. It doesn't matter if it's a truck. It doesn't matter if it's an Xfinity car or a Cup car or anything in between, a dirt track, a super speedway. He is incredible. Such a well-rounded driver like Kyle Busch. They literally can drive fucking anything and be competitive. 19 to go. Gosh, that's crazy. That's crazy. Now Kyle in 9th. Man, fuck. I mean, with this many laps left, maybe Kyle can get into the top 5. I didn't know if it was possible, but, I mean, never doubt Kyle Larson. Wow. I put him on the thumb for a reason. I mean, I could have definitely went for, my guy Hemrick and whatnot, but got Chastain, Riggs, Heim, and Hemrick in the top 4. And then you got Larson there in 9th, just creeping up. Four cautions, pretty, average for a truck race. 10 lead changes, 22 caution laps. We had a wreck involving 2 trucks within the first lap. And, ever since then, it's been kind of this green flag, regular stops. After stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3, obviously. Now, Ross Chastain making a move to the front. Ross definitely has a chance to win this race as well. And then we got the Ducks coming on here in about 14 minutes, but I imagine this race will probably be over by the time the Ducks start. But I will be watching that for sure. I'm not going to watch too many March Madness games in the first 2 days, but once it goes further in the tournament, then I'll watch a little bit more. But Chastain, Riggs, Heim, Ankrum, Hemrick, Garcia, Smith, Larson in 8th, Enfinga in 9th, and Majeski in 10th. It's funny too, because in NASCAR, I feel like they do a great job, with commentary, regardless if it's male or female. And they are much better on the mic than a lot of former players that try to do like NHL, NBA, NFL, like NASCAR, and then just racing in general. Again, they have a lot of talented individuals that, and like I said, sometimes, guys that play baseball, basketball, football, and hockey, they think that they can do, play-by-play or color, but a lot of them can't, and then they can try to do a podcast or whatever, and, but most of them fail at it pretty miserably. But with a lot of these drivers in NASCAR, they're very well-spoken, smart individuals, and a lot of these guys could end up being in the booth once they're retired. I mean, you got Harvick, Big Bad Brad, and Logano in the booth, and again, if you didn't know that they were, commentating, you would think it was just like regular people that are doing the trucks. I feel like the intelligence for NASCAR individuals is a lot higher than in other sports. Not to say that people are stupid in other sports, but you definitely have, a little bit higher IQ on some of the things with some of these guys. Not every NASCAR driver is smart. Some of them are, probably just average intelligence and whatnot, but you get some really smart individuals that are well-spoken and have good voices. 13 to go. Yeah, there's a good chance that Auburn will be, if I end up doing a stream, they'll be one of the, top 3 teams that I would be looking to do. I did some during the regular season. I would say Duke would be number 1 for me because of Cooper Flagg, just to be able to evaluate him, going into the draft and seeing what he can do in this tourney, even off the ankle sprain. And then Auburn would definitely be right behind Duke, and then a few other teams. So. But I kind of want to wait until it gets to be a little bit more spicier on the matchup. Heim with the pass. Ooh, he's so good. Heim, Riggs, Chastain, Ankrum, Hemrick, Larson in 6th. Unbelievable. Garcia, Smith, Engfinger, and Majeski in 10th. We might have a Heim, Riggs, Chastain, Ankrum, Hemrick, and maybe Ankrum can go down a couple spots and we can get Hemrick and Larson all up there with Chastain, Riggs, and Heim. Those have been the best trucks overall here today. $11 laps to go. Now Larson in 5th. Unbelievable. And you put him on the thumb, he gets fucking spun out, and then all of a sudden climbs his way into the top 5. Unbelievable. Even though that means Hemrick goes down to 6. Hey, shit happens. No, I agree. Winners this season: Daytona, Corey Heim; Atlanta, Kyle Busch; Las Vegas, Corey Heim. So Corey's trying to win the championship this year, as you can see, and he has been very, very strong. Kind of like Christopher Bell in the Cup Series, and he's on pace now to pick up his 3rd win out of 4 races. Unbelievable. Eight to go. Heim, Riggs, Chastain, Ankrum, Larson. Larson and Heim got the fastest trucks. But I'm not sure if there's going to be enough time for Larson to get all the way up to Heim. Hemrick in 6th, and I'll take that. He had a couple races where he was outside the top 10, but he's been in the top 10 pretty much all day with Ross, with Corey, and with Kyle. So we'll see where this goes. Larson just trying to get enough speed to pass Ankrum. 6 laps to go. And as long as Corey doesn't run out of gas, he should be able to win this. But again, you've got a few people, kind of creeping up. Yeah, Lane Riggs is definitely keeping the pressure on. Larson going on the low side here. There he is, Larson in 4th, and he'll get past Chastain and Riggs pretty quick, but again, we only got 5 laps to go. Now, Larson is an animal. He is a fucking animal. And again, if he didn't end up getting spun out, it would probably be him or Heim at the end. Now he's going back on the high side. Uh-oh, Larson in 3rd. Just got past Ankrum. Now he needs to get past Riggs. Does he have enough time? 4 laps to go. Larson was in 20th, and just in a matter of a couple laps, he's in 3rd. Holy cow. I mean, I would have preferred to see a few more wrecks, besides that wreck we had on the first lap, but this is some good racing here. And again, Larson's just trying to be able to understand this track, and again, he's going for the trifecta. He's trying to win here, he's trying to win tomorrow at Xfinity and the Cup, which really has only been done by Kyle Busch in recent memory. So, oh, Larson in 2nd. Holy cow. Now Corey's falling back a little bit. Riggs in first, Larson in second, Heim in third. Wow, the truck is shutting down. Wow, Larson actually could come back and win this. Holy shit. I did not think he would have enough laps to come back, but he is getting closer and closer and closer to Lane Riggs. And Heim and Larson's trucks were the best. Heim had some mechanical failure there, and instead of being up front, he's starting to fall back a little bit, but still hanging tough in third. Wow. Oh yeah. Well, especially when you have a chance to win, your third race in 4, races total so far to start off the season. Larson in first. Oh shit. Oh my God. Larson from 20th to first. Oh my God. Oh my God. 2 laps to go. Larson might win. Oh, well, I did put him on the thumb. So again, a lot of times my S, sometimes I have a feeling I'll put someone on a thumb and then they deliver. Wow. And that's happened quite a few times. I didn't have to go with Larson on the thumb today, but something told me to do it. And wow. 2 to go and Larson's up front. Unbelievable. Again, it's all about having that fast truck, not having a mechanical failure. If you're Heim, you're pissed. But again, what can you do? Last lap. Final lap. Larson's going to win. Wow, unbelievable. Yeah, never count Larson out. I mean, even getting spun out at lap 45, to go, didn't really look like he might have enough time, to be able to catch up. But again, it shows you, even if you have just a little bit of time, if your truck is fast, and you got someone experienced, anything is possible. This is a fantastic win. And there it is, Kyle Larson with the win. Unbelievable. Riggs in second, Heim in third, Anchorman fourth, and my guy Napa Howe in fifth. Chastain in sixth, Garcia in seventh, Smith in eighth, Enfinger in ninth, Honeycutt in 10th. If you're Heim, you're pissed because you could have won this race. You could have won this race, but again, Larson. Man, what an incredible driver. And again, he'll be trying to win Xfinity tomorrow, and more than likely we'll do that race, and he'll try to win on Sunday as well. Wow. Yeah, if Heim didn't have mechanical issues, I think he would have won, and it would have been Heim 1, Larson 2. But those mechanical issues hurt him really bad, and what an awesome victory. That was like some Dale Earnhardt shit right there. Incredible. And again, now that's his third win in 5 truck races. So we know when Larson races in the truck, he is just as dominant as he is, in an Xfinity car or in a Cup car. And wow. I mean, again, I would have liked to seen a few more wrecks, but to see someone go and get spun out and then to be able to go from 20th to first, in a matter of, 20, 25, 30 laps, incredible. Wow. Pretty sweet. Well, Oregon is going to be coming on here in just a couple minutes. I got to take Paisley on a walk. I love you guys, and I appreciate you guys very, very much. Shout out to all the people that liked, donated, commented, and shared. And when you put somebody on the thumb and they deliver, I'm not surprised. I got one question for you. Well, talk sports like us. Your boy Ryan, Northwest Sports Fanatics, Kyle Larson. I see you, and I'm out. Okay.